The name of this track, initially when it was a beat, it was called I Mean Fucking Business, because it just has that energy to it. It had like a gravitas to it. I always liked this track, but we made it back in 2014. I didn't know if anything would ever happen with it, because some tracks I might put out as instrumentals, other tracks artists might use, some tracks just live on the hard drive. This was one of those tracks that I just kind of lost track of. I was working on a bunch of tracks for my instrumental album at the time. I was at Chris Key's spot. I recorded some drums and he just started playing the keys. As soon as he started playing, I already knew we had something. Fast forward to 2020, Locksmith comes into the studio. You know, we just play through a bunch of tracks, put stuff aside, record a bunch of records. And this one in particular, Locksmith heard it and he was like, yo, that shit is fire. So he took the tracks home, he FaceTimed Xzibit, and Xzibit wanted to jump on the track too.
Raised with respect, so I live by a code that was laid by the vets. When y'all niggas pay homage to your ancestors, when y'all niggas be honest, you let the man get you.
And the first thing I hear are these incredible vocals from the singer named Brevi.
God, we walk with God.
Definitely rose the hairs on my arms the first time I heard it. And then at the end of the track, I hear this other verse and I'm like, yo, is that Ras Kass? Ras Kass jumped on the track.
To the motherland, our future is backwards. Black shorts, hijack Moors became the crack horse, rap wars. What snitches getting stacks for? Marcus Garvey, Black Star pilot to Blackbird.
Super dope. So after I heard the audio message, I was like, yo, Lock, come to the studio, let's record it. So he came through, we cut the vocals, he brought Xzibit's verse and Ras Kass verse and the hook, and we put it together right on the spot.
Step and fetch some recognition. Do we really like the shit or just victims of repetition? Every record pitching, they picking the least, most definitive. I don't follow trends, they purposely try to limit his. Let's eliminate the label from the genre and let the labels like take fate in the form of
typically when we were in the studio together, we'd make a bunch of different ideas. I ended up, as usual, just bringing those ideas here, arranging them, tweaking them, working on the mix, just getting them to a certain level. So this is the Ableton session that we made the beat in. Back in 2014, me and Chris Keys worked on this track together. The way I started it was I started with the drum pattern. All I did for this drum pattern is I took samples from the browser and just dragged them in. Like a lot of times people use drum rack in Ableton, but sometimes workflow, I like just dragging in individual sounds and placing them on the grid. So this is what the drum track sounds like. The original beat was a little different. Since I've made this track, I came out with Drums That Knock. So I wanted to take some of the newer sounds of Drums That Knock and mix it with the kind of older, more vintage sound of this beat. So this kick drum, Big Bop Kick, is from Drums That Knock, Volume 8. And then there are two other kicks that I layered it with. Then I added the snare and clap. Then I added a reverse clap to go into the clap. And then after that, I added a tambourine hit and one hi-hat. Just kept it real simple. So after I had that pattern, I pretty much just left it on loop, and Chris Keys pretty much immediately came in and played this piano line. Basically, after we had that, the next section, Chris Keys played the bass line on Trillion. So for that bass, I loaded up a sound in Trillion. It was just this R&B mute bass, and Chris Keys literally just played it on the keyboard. After we had the vocals and everything in Ableton, Locksmith left. I mixed it, got it to a certain point, and I liked it, but I wanted to like stem it out and bring it into Pro Tools and do the final mix, which I did, but the Ableton mix captured this certain essence that the Pro Tools mix didn't really capture. So we ended up just sticking with the Ableton version, and that's the one that came out. The track is crazy. Locksmith, Xzibit, Ras Kass, Brevi, With God. Super fire. What can I say?
We walk with God.